There are nights when the heart breaks in silence, like a glass falling to the floor that no one hears. Emily knew that sound well. She had heard it when she received her third university rejection letter, when she counted the coins for rent, when she looked in the mirror and wondered if anyone would ever truly see her. Her green eyes reflected years of struggle, of carrying the weight of the world on her 20-year-old shoulders. But that February afternoon, as the cold wind whipped against the windows of the Golden Coast, something changed. A man with eyes as blue as the midday sky looked at her not as the waitress who needed the job, but as the woman she was. And for the first time in years, Emily felt that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be seen. The cold February wind rattled the window panes of the small apartment in Santa Monica, California. Emily Harris, 20 years old, sat on the living room floor, surrounded by university rejection letters and unpaid bills. Her green eyes, normally bright as emeralds in the sun, were now red from tears she couldn't hold back. "It wasn't enough," she whispered, holding the last letter in her trembling hands. UCLA had rejected her scholarship application. Again. It was the third time in 2 years that her dreams had crumbled like sandcastles. Her pale skin contrasted with the brown hair that fell messily over her shoulders. She had inherited those green eyes from her maternal grandmother, who always told her they were windows to the soul. But now, those windows reflected only pain and hopelessness. The sound of the door opening startled her. Her younger sister, Jessica, 16, walked in with a smile that vanished when she saw Emily's state. "Not again?" Jessica asked, dropping her school backpack on the floor. Emily nodded, unable to speak. She had worked 3 different jobs for 2 years, cleaning houses in the mornings, babysitting in the afternoons, and working at a diner on weekends. All to save enough to study psychology. She wanted to help people, to understand human pain, to heal it, but the money was never enough. "Emily, look at me," Jessica said, kneeling beside her. "This isn't the end of the world." "Isn't it?" Emily replied, her voice cracking. "I'm 20, Jess. My friends are already in college. They have boyfriends, plans for the future. I can barely pay the rent on this place." Jessica took her sister's hands. "You are the strongest person I know. When Mum and Dad died in that accident, you were 18 and you took care of me. You worked day and night so I could stay in school. And look where that got me," Emily sighed. "Nowhere. Don't say that. You gave me everything I needed to be who I am today. I'm a senior in high school because of you." Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Sometimes I feel like life is mocking me, Jess. Like it's some cruel joke. Maybe it's because something better is coming," Jessica said tenderly. "Mom always said that after the strongest storm comes the most beautiful rainbow." Emily managed a small smile, remembering those words. Her mother, Helen, had been a wise and strong woman. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and her father, Robert, was a mechanic. They didn't have much money, but their home was always filled with love and hope. "Tomorrow I'll go look for work again," Emily said, trying to sound determined. "Maybe at a restaurant downtown. I've heard they pay better. And what about your dreams?" "Dreams don't pay the bills, Jess." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city that never sleeps. The cars passing on the street, the distant sirens, the constant hum of a metropolis of millions. She got up and walked to the small window of her room. From there, she could see the lights of the tall buildings in the distance, where the successful people lived, the people who had achieved their dreams. She wondered if she would ever be one of them. "Why is it so hard?" she asked the starry sky. "Why are some people born with everything while others have to fight for every breath?" There was no answer, only the silence of the night and the echo of her own words in the empty room. The next day, Emily got up early and got ready to go look for a job. She put on her best blouse, a white one that had belonged to her mother, and pulled her hair back into a high ponytail. Her green eyes had regained some of their sparkle, but the sadness was still visible. "I'm going to look for a job," she told Jessica, who was eating cereal at the small kitchen table. "Want me to come with you?" "No, you need to go to school." One of us has to achieve their dreams, Emily replied with a forced smile. Jessica got up and hugged her sister. You're going to achieve yours too, Emily, I know it. Emily left the apartment with a strange feeling in her chest. She didn't know if it was anxiety or something else. As she walked the streets of Santa Monica, she watched the people passing by, executives in expensive suits, college students with backpacks full of books, mothers taking their children to school. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a place to go. She, on the other hand, felt lost in her own city. She reached the downtown area after an hour on the bus. The streets were buzzing with activity. Street performers, tourists taking pictures, office workers walking hurriedly. It was a world completely different from hers. She went into several restaurants, but the answers were always the same. We don't have any openings. We need experience. We'll call you. Each rejection was another stab in her already wounded heart. She was about to give up when she passed by an elegant restaurant called the Golden Coast. It was a beautiful place, with a modern facade and large windows that revealed an interior lit by crystal chandeliers. I don't stand a chance here, she thought. This place is too fancy for me. But something pushed her to go inside. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was fate playing its hand. She thought this was the worst night of her life, but she couldn't imagine what was yet to come. Have you ever felt like the world was mocking your dreams? Comment from which city you're watching us and tell us your story. Don't forget to like if you want to know what happens to Emily. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The interior of the Golden Coast was even more impressive than Emily had imagined. The walls were decorated with contemporary art depicting California landscapes, from the rugged coast to the serene deserts. The aroma of fresh seafood and grilled steak filled the air, mingling with the soft sound of acoustic guitar music. Emily felt small and intimidated. The waiters wore elegant white shirts and black ties, and the customers seemed to belong to a completely different world from hers. She was about to turn and leave when a voice stopped her. "Can I help you with something?" She turned to find a man of about 30, tall and athletic. He had black hair combed back and eyes as blue as the midday sky. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that enhanced his commanding presence. I came to ask if you need waitresses," Emily said, feeling her cheeks flush. The man looked her up and down, not disrespectfully, but with curiosity. His blue eyes seemed to read every detail of her face, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. "Do you have experience in restaurants of this caliber?" he asked in a deep, controlled voice. "I have experience in customer service," Emily replied, trying to sound confident. "I've worked in different places, and I'm a quick learner." "What's your name?" "Emily Harris." "I'm Jacob Miller," he said, extending his hand. "I'm the general manager of this restaurant." When their hands touched, Emily felt an electric current run through her body. Jacob's hand was strong and warm, and for a moment they both stood motionless, as if time had stopped. "Nice to meet you," Emily murmured, quickly withdrawing her hand. Jacob looked at her with an intensity that made her nervous. There was something in his eyes that told her he had also felt that inexplicable connection. "Why do you want to work here?" Jacob asked, crossing his arms. Emily took a deep breath. She could lie, invent a perfect story, but something in Jacob's gaze pushed her to be honest. "Because I need the money," she answered directly. "My younger sister is in school, and I work to support our home. I want to study psychology someday, but for now I need to work." Jacob nodded slowly. It was refreshing to find someone who didn't try to impress him with lies or made-up stories. "Can you start today?" he asked suddenly. Emily blinked, surprised. "Really? We have a waitress who called in sick, and we need to cover her shift. It's a trial, of course. If you do well, you could stay." Yes, I can start." "Today?" Emily replied, feeling hope rekindle in her chest. Jacob smiled for the first time, and Emily realized that his smile completely transformed his face. He went from being a serious and intimidating man to someone warm and attractive. "Good. Maria will give you the uniform and explain how things work here," Jacob said, pointing to an older woman approaching them. Maria was a woman in her 50s, with greying hair tied in an elegant bun and kind eyes. She wore an impeccable uniform and had a motherly smile. "Nice to meet you, dear," Maria said, taking Emily's hands. "I'm Maria Johnson. I've been working here for 15 years. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson." "None of that, Mrs. Just Maria," she laughed. "Come, I'll show you everything you need to know." For the next 2 hours, Maria taught Emily the ropes of the restaurant. How to take orders, how to serve the food, how to deal with customers. It was a whole new world for her, but she felt comfortable and excited. "The secret is to make every customer feel special," Maria explained as they walked between the tables. "Here we don't just serve food, we serve experiences." Emily watched Jacob from a distance. He supervised everything with meticulous attention, but he also treated all employees with respect and kindness. He was different from what she had imagined when she first saw him. "Is Jacob a good boss?" Emily asked as Maria showed her how to fold the napkins. Maria smiled. "Jacob is a complicated man, but fair. He comes from a very wealthy family, but he's not like the other rich kids. He really cares about this place and the people who work here." "Wealthy family?" "His father owns a chain of restaurants across the country. Jacob could be sitting in a fancy office, but he prefers to be here getting his hands dirty." Emily nodded, curious to learn more about Jacob's story. There was something about him that intrigued her, a sadness hidden behind that controlled facade. Her first day of work was exhausting but successful. She served more than 20 tables, and although she made a few small mistakes, the customers seemed satisfied with her service. Maria praised her several times, and some customers even gave her generous tips, which she converted in her head to a significant portion of the $1,500 monthly rent. At the end of the shift, as Emily was changing in the locker room, Jacob approached her. "How did you feel?" he asked, leaning against the wall. "Tired, but happy," Emily replied. "Honestly, I like this job. It shows. The customers have spoken well of you." Emily smiled, feeling proud of herself. "Does that mean I can stay?" Jacob looked her directly in the eyes. "Yes, you can stay." For a moment they both stood in silence, looking at each other. There was a tension in the air, something unsaid floating between them. "Thank you, Jacob," Emily said softly. "You don't know what this means to me." "I think I do," he replied, and for the first time, Emily saw vulnerability in his blue eyes. Emily was about to ask him what he meant by that when Maria appeared. "Are you two done chatting?" Maria asked with a mischievous smile. "I have to close the restaurant." Jacob immediately straightened up, returning to his professional posture. "Of course, Emily, your schedule will be Tuesday to Sunday, from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Does that work for you?" "Perfect," Emily replied. "Good. See you tomorrow then." As Emily headed for the exit, Jacob called her one more time. "Emily," turned. "Welcome to the team." That night, Emily returned to her apartment with a completely different feeling in her chest. Jessica was waiting up for her, studying at the kitchen table. "How did it go?" Jessica asked, closing her book. "I got the job," Emily replied, smiling broadly. Jessica screamed with excitement and ran to hug her sister. "I knew you would. Tell me everything." Emily told her about the restaurant, about Maria, about the customers. But when she got to the part about Jacob, something in her voice changed. "And what's the boss like?" Jessica asked, noticing the change. "He's different," Emily replied, feeling her cheeks flush. "He's serious, but fair, and he has these incredible blue eyes." Jessica smiled. "Oh, Emily, do you like him?" "No, don't be ridiculous. He's just my boss." "Yeah, right. I know that look. It's the same one you used to get when you watched soap operas with Mom." Emily rolled her eyes, but she couldn't deny that there was something special about Jacob, something that made her feel nervous and excited at the same time. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but think about Jacob's blue eyes and the way he had looked at her. It was as if he could see past her facade, beyond her fears and insecurities. "Maybe Jess is right," she thought as she closed her eyes. "Maybe after the storm comes the rainbow." And just when she started to trust, the past returned unannounced. Has a job ever unexpectedly changed your life? Tell us in the comments from which city you're following us. Like if you want to know what mystery Jacob is hiding. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. 3 weeks had passed since Emily started working at the Golden Coast, and every day she felt more comfortable in her new environment. The customers knew her by name. Maria had become a surrogate mother to her, and her tips finally allowed her to breathe financially. But what intrigued her most was Jacob. Every day she discovered something new about him. The way he treated all employees with respect, regardless of their position. How he stayed late checking every detail of the restaurant. The way his eyes softened when he spoke with elderly customers, especially with the grandmothers who came for dinner on Sundays. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the restaurant was quieter than usual. Emily was wiping down tables when she overheard a conversation between Jacob and Maria at the bar. "You can't keep running from your father forever," Maria was saying in a low voice. "I'm not running," Jacob replied, but his voice sounded tense. "I just don't want to be part of that world." "But Jake, he needs you. The family business runs perfectly fine without me. I have my own path." Emily tried not to listen, but her curiosity was stronger. What had happened between Jacob and his family? Why had he chosen to work in a single restaurant when he apparently had access to an entire empire? "Good afternoon," a male voice said behind her. Emily turned to find a man in his 50s, elegantly dressed in a grey suit that probably cost more than her rent for an entire year. He had the same black hair as Jacob, but with greying temples, and his blue eyes were identical to her boss's. "Good afternoon," Emily replied politely. "Table for one?" The man smiled, but there was something cold in that smile. "I'm looking for Jacob Miller. I'm his father." Emily felt as if the air had thickened. Of course, I'll go get him." When she turned to where Jacob was, she realized he had already seen his father. His face had hardened, and his jaw was clenched. "Dad," Jacob said, approaching, but his tone was formal and distant. "Jacob," the man replied, "we need to talk." "Here, at my job? Since you don't answer my calls, you've left me no other choice." Jacob looked around the restaurant, aware that some customers and employees were watching. "Fine, 5 minutes." They both headed to a corner, a table, the farthest from the other customers. Emily tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't help watching them out of the corner of her eye. The conversation between father and son was tense. The father spoke with emphatic gestures, while Jacob maintained a rigid and defensive posture. Although she couldn't hear the words, Emily could feel the tension from where she stood. Suddenly, Jacob stood up abruptly from the table, his face red with anger. "No, Dad! I already told you no!" "Jacob, don't be stubborn. You have responsibilities. My only responsibility is to myself and to the people who truly matter to me." Jacob's father stood up too, and for a moment, Emily feared there would be a physical confrontation. But the older man simply adjusted his tie and spoke in a cold voice. "You have until the end of the month, Jacob. Either you come back to the family company willingly, or I'll force you to come back." With those words, Jacob's father left the restaurant, leaving a heavy atmosphere in his wake. Jacob stood by the table, his fists clenched and his breathing heavy. Emily could see he was struggling to control his emotions. Without a second thought, she approached him. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Jacob looked at her, and for the first time, Emily saw real pain in his blue eyes. Not the mask of control he always wore, but genuine vulnerability. "Yes, I'm fine," he replied, but his voice trembled slightly. "You don't seem fine," Emily insisted. "Do you want to talk?" Jacob looked at her with surprise. In the 3 years he had been managing the restaurant, none of his employees had approached him so personally. But there was something in Emily's voice, in the sincerity of her green eyes, that calmed him. "It's not something I can talk about," he replied. "Why not?" "Because it's complicated. My life is complicated." Emily moved a little closer, enough so he could speak without others hearing. We all have complicated lives, Jacob. But sometimes it's easier to carry the weight when someone else helps you. Jacob stared at her. There was something about her that soothed him, something he had never experienced with anyone else. It was as if Emily could see beyond his facade, beyond his defenses. "My father wants me to leave all this," he said finally, gesturing around the restaurant. "He wants me to go back to work for the family company, but I can't do that." "Why not?" Jacob sighed deeply. "Because when I was there, I wasn't myself. I was just Richard Miller's son, the heir to the Miller dynasty. I wasn't Jake." Emily nodded, understanding perfectly that feeling of losing yourself in the expectations of others. "And here, you are Jake? Here, I'm myself. Here, I work with my hands. I know every employee by name. I care about every detail. Here, I'm real." "Then you have to fight for that," Emily said with determination. "You have to fight to be who you really are." Jacob smiled for the first time since his father had arrived. "How can a 20-year-old girl give such wise advice?" "Because I've had to fight to be myself my whole life," Emily replied, "and I've learned that it's not worth living the life others expect of you." In that moment, they both realized they were very close to each other. They could feel each other's breath, see every detail of their faces. Jacob raised his hand and gently touched Emily's cheek. "Thank you," he murmured. Emily felt as if her heart was going to burst out of her chest. Jacob's touch was soft and warm, and for a moment the rest of the world disappeared. "You're welcome," she replied in a whisper. They stayed like that for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity, lost in each other's eyes, until Maria's voice interrupted them. "Jacob, I need you to check tomorrow's order." They both pulled away quickly, feeling their cheeks flush. Jacob cleared his throat and returned to his professional posture. "Yes, of course, right away," Jacob replied. Emily returned to her tasks, but her mind was completely elsewhere. She could still feel Jacob's touch on her cheek. She could still see the vulnerability in his eyes. The rest of the day passed in a haze of confused emotions. Jacob behaved normally, professionally, but Emily could feel that something had changed between them. There was a new tension, a connection that hadn't been there before. At the end of the shift, as Emily was getting ready to leave, Jacob approached her once more. "Emily, what happened today?" "What happened today?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Jacob smiled, realizing she was giving him an easy way out. "Nothing, just thanks for listening. Whenever you want to talk, I'm here," Emily replied sincerely. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you so different from other people?" Emily blinked, surprised by the question. "Different how?" "You're genuine, real. You don't try to impress me or get something from me. You're just yourself. It's the only way." "I know how to be," Emily replied with a smile. Jacob nodded slowly. "It's a beautiful way to be." That night, Emily returned home with her heart racing. Jessica immediately noticed that something had happened. "What happened to you? You look different," Jessica said, studying her sister's face. "Different how?" "Like you're glowing from the inside." Emily blushed. "It's nothing. It was just a different day at work." "Different how?" Emily told her about Jacob's father's visit, about their conversation, about the intimate moment they had shared. Jessica listened attentively, smiling more and more. "Emily, he's falling for you," Jessica said when she finished listening. "Don't be silly. It's not silly. A man doesn't open up like that to a woman unless he feels something special for her. He's my boss, Jess. Nothing more. And you? What do you feel for him?" Emily was silent for a moment. What did she feel for Jacob? It was confusing, intense, terrifying, and beautiful at the same time. "I don't know," she finally replied. "I like being near him. I like how he makes me feel when he looks at me. But it's complicated." "Why?" "Because he's Jacob Miller, son of a wealthy family, and I'm Emily Harris, a girl from Santa Monica who can barely pay her rent." Jessica approached her sister and took her hands. "Emily, you are worth so much more than you think. You are smart, beautiful, hard-working, and you have a huge heart. Any man would be lucky to have you. But, no buts, if he can't see all that you are, then he doesn't deserve you. That night, Emily lay awake thinking about Jessica's words, about the conversation with Jacob, about the moment he had touched her cheek. There was something growing in her heart, something she had never felt before. Could it be love? Could a girl like her fall for a man like Jacob? And more importantly, could he return those feelings? The next day, Emily arrived at work with a mix of nervousness and excitement. But when she entered the restaurant, she realized something had changed. Jacob was at the bar, talking on the phone with a tense voice. "Yes, Dad, I understand. Yes, I'll think about it." When he hung up the phone, Emily could see his face was pale and worried. "Everything okay?" Maria asked, approaching him. "I don't know," Jacob replied, running his hands through his hair. "I really don't know." Emily approached slowly, feeling that something bad was about to happen. "Jacob, what's wrong?" He looked at her, and in his blue eyes, she saw a mixture of pain and determination that frightened her. "My father has given me an ultimatum. I have to choose between the restaurant or my family." Emily felt as if the floor was moving beneath her feet. "What do you mean?" "It means that if I don't return to the family company in a week, he will disinherit me completely. And worse, he'll use his influence to shut down this restaurant." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria put a hand to her chest, and Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. But he can't do that," Emily murmured. "He can, and he will," Jacob replied bitterly. "Richard Miller always gets what he wants. And what are you going to do?" Jacob looked her directly in the eyes, and Emily saw that he had already made a decision that would break her heart. "I'm going back," he said finally. "I can't let all these people lose their jobs because of me. I can't let you lose your job." Emily felt tears begin to form in her eyes. "Jacob, no. It's the only way, Emily. It's the only way to protect what really matters." But what he said before he left changed the course of the entire story. Do you think Jacob is making the right decision? Tell us in the comments from which city you're watching us. Like if your heart broke with this news too, subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion of this story. The week following the ultimatum was one of the hardest of Emily's life. Jacob had changed completely. He was no longer the warm, approachable man she had known. He had become distant, professional, almost cold. He spoke only when necessary and avoided being alone with her. Emily understood that he was trying to protect himself, to make the inevitable separation easier, but that didn't make it hurt any less. It was Friday night, and the restaurant was packed with customers. Emily worked on autopilot, smiling at customers, taking orders, serving food, but her mind was elsewhere, on the man behind the bar, checking the receipts with a stone-faced expression. "Emily," Maria called her during a lull. "We need to talk." They headed to the kitchen, away from prying ears. "Honey, what's going on between you and Jacob?" Maria asked directly. "I don't know what you're talking about," Emily replied, but her voice wasn't convincing. "Emily, I have eyes, and I have experience. I know when two people are falling in love, and I also know when they're suffering." Emily felt tears welling up. "It doesn't matter what I feel, Maria. He's going to leave, and you're just going to let him go without telling him how you feel. What for? To complicate things even more? He has to make the decision that's best for everyone." Maria took Emily's hands. "Honey, sometimes what's best for everyone isn't what's best for the heart, and sometimes the heart is all that matters. But he has responsibilities, people who depend on him, and he also has a right to be happy, just like you have. A right to fight for your happiness." That night, after the restaurant closed, Emily stayed behind to help with the cleaning. It was an excuse, and she knew it. In reality, she wanted to be near Jacob, even if it was in silence. When the last employees had left, only Jacob, Maria, and Emily remained. Maria wisely said her goodbyes early. "See you tomorrow," she said, winking at Emily before she left. Emily and Jacob were left alone in the quiet restaurant. She continued to wipe down the tables while he counted the money from the cash register. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words. "Emily," Jacob said finally, without looking up from the money. "Yes?" Can you leave that for a moment? We need to talk." Emily put down the cleaning cloth and approached the bar where Jacob was. He had finished counting the money and was now looking directly at her. "I want you to know that what's happening has nothing to do with you," Jacob began. You've been the best thing about this place." "Jacob, let me finish, please," he interrupted. "I need to say this before I lose my nerve." Emily nodded, feeling her heart begin to race. "When you came here, I thought you were just another employee. But you changed everything. You changed the way I see this place, the way I see myself." Jacob got up from his chair and walked towards Emily, but kept a safe distance. "With you, I've learned what it means to be genuine, what it means to truly connect with another person. And that scares me, Emily. It scares me because I've never felt anything like this." "What is it that you feel?" Emily asked in a whisper. Jacob closed his eyes for a moment as if gathering his courage. "I'm falling in love with you," he said finally, "and that makes everything infinitely harder." Emily felt as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. The words she had been waiting to hear, the words she had dreamed of, were now there, floating in the air. Between them, "Jacob, but I can't ask you to wait for me," he continued. "I can't ask you to put your life on hold while I solve my family problems. It wouldn't be fair." "What if I want to wait?" Emily asked, taking a step towards him. "No," Jacob replied, but his voice cracked slightly. "I can't allow it." "Why not?" "Because you deserve better. You deserve someone who can give you everything. Someone who isn't tied to the expectations of a dysfunctional family." Emily moved closer until she was close enough to touch his arm. "Jacob, look at me," she said softly. He looked at her, and Emily could see all the pain and confusion in his blue eyes. "I don't want someone who can give me everything. I want you, with your problems, with your complicated family, with your fears. I want you." Jacob closed his eyes and shook his head. "Emily, don't make this any harder than it already is." "Harder for whom? For you? Or for your father? For everyone? And what about what I want? Don't have a say in this decision?" Jacob looked at her with surprise. "Of course you do, but—" "Then listen to me," Emily said with determination. "I'm falling in love with you too, and I don't care if your family has money and mine doesn't. I don't care if your world is different from mine. The only thing that matters is how you make me feel when I'm with you. And how do I make you feel? Like I matter, like I'm special, like I deserve to be seen and valued." Jacob raised his hand and gently touched Emily's face just as he had done days before. "You are important, you are special, and you deserve to be seen and valued." "Then stay," Emily whispered. "Fight for us. Fight for what we could be." "I can't," Jacob replied, but now there were tears in his eyes. "If I stay, my father will destroy this place. He'll destroy everything we've built here. You'll lose your job. Maria will lose hers. All the employees will be out on the street. But if you leave, we lose something more." "Important," Emily said. "We lose the chance to be happy." Jacob moved closer until their foreheads touched. They were both breathing heavily, lost in the intensity of the moment. "Do you know what the cruelest part of all this is?" Jacob murmured. "What?" "That just when I found the person I want to be with, I have to walk away from her." "You don't have to walk away," Emily insisted. "We can find another way." "There isn't one, Emily. I've thought of every possible option." "There isn't one." They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breathing the same air for several minutes. It was as if they were trying to memorize that moment, to engrave in their hearts the feeling of being so close. Finally, Jacob pulled away and took a step back. "Monday is my last day here," he said in a hoarse voice. "On Tuesday, I'll start working at the corporate headquarters of the family company." Emily felt as if a knife had been plunged into her chest. "And what happens to us?" "There can't be an us. Emily, there just can't. Just like that, you're going to act as if what we feel doesn't matter." "What we feel matters too much," Jacob replied. "That's why I have to leave, because if I stay one more day, I won't have the strength to walk away from you." Emily wiped away the tears that had started to fall down her cheeks. And what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to carry on as if nothing happened? You're going to continue being the incredible woman you are. You're going to keep working. You're going to save money. You're going to study psychology like you always wanted. You're going to achieve all your dreams. And what if my dreams now include being with you? Jacob closed his eyes, as if those words were too painful to hear. Then you'll have to dream new dreams, he said finally. Emily nodded slowly, understanding that no matter how much she fought, no matter how much she argued, Jacob's decision was made. Okay, she said in a trembling voice. If that's what you want. It's not what I want, Jacob replied immediately. It's what I have to do. Is there a difference? Jacob looked at her one last time, engraving in his memory every detail of her face, every shade of her green eyes. Yes, there is, he said. What I want is you. What I have to do is let you go. With those words, Jacob grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. Emily, he called. Yes? Never forget how special you are. And please don't let what happened between us stop you from finding happiness with someone else. And you, are you going to find happiness with someone else? Jacob smiled sadly. I don't think that's possible. I think there's only one you in this world. And with those words, Jacob left the restaurant, leaving Emily alone among the empty tables and the echoes of a conversation that had changed everything. Emily stood in the same spot for several minutes, trying to process what had happened. She had heard the words. She wanted to hear, Jacob was in love with her, but she had also heard the words she had feared. He was leaving. Can you love someone who broke your soul? The answer is just a step away. Do you think love is enough to overcome social differences? Comment from which city you're watching us and tell us what you would do in Emily's place. Like if you feel your heart is breaking too. Subscribe to see if this story has a happy ending. 2 weeks had passed since Jacob left the restaurant. 2 weeks in which Emily had tried to act as if everything were normal, as if her heart didn't break a little more each day that passed without seeing him. The new manager, Frank Miller, was a competent but cold man. He lacked Jacob's warmth, his way of making every employee feel special. The restaurant ran, but it had lost its soul. Emily, table 6 needs their check, Frank said from behind the bar. Right away, Emily replied, forcing a smile. Maria approached her as she took the check from table 6. Honey, you have to stop torturing yourself like this, she said in a low voice. I don't know what you're talking about, Emily replied, but they both knew it was a lie. You're pale, you've lost weight, and your eyes don't sparkle like they used to. This is no life, Emily. I'm fine, Maria. I just need time. Time for what? To forget him? Because if that's it, I've got news for you. You don't forget your first love that easily. Emily stopped in her tracks. How do you know he's my first love? Maria smiled tenderly. Because I have eyes, honey, and because I also had a first love who broke my heart. What happened to him? I let him go without a fight, Maria replied sadly, and I've regretted it for the rest of my life. Before Emily could respond, the restaurant door opened and an elegantly dressed woman entered. She was older, in her 60s, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and clothes that screamed money and class. Good afternoon, the woman said in an authoritative voice. I'm looking for Emily Harris. Emily approached curiously. That's me. How can I help you? I'm Helen Miller, Jacob's mother. We need to talk. Emily felt as if cold water had been thrown on her. Jacob's mother was here, in the restaurant, looking for her specifically. Can we speak in private? Mrs. Miller asked. Frank, who had overheard the conversation, immediately approached. Mrs. Miller, it's an honor to have you in our restaurant. Would you like a special table? Thank you, but I'd prefer to speak with Miss Harris in private. Is there an office where we can talk? Frank led them to the small office at the back of the restaurant. Emily followed, her heart beating a mile a minute, wondering what Jacob's mother could possibly want with her. Once alone, Helen Miller studied Emily from head to toe, as if evaluating a product she was considering buying. So, you're the famous Emily, she said finally. I didn't know I was famous, Emily replied, trying to maintain her composure. My son hasn't stopped talking about you since he came back home. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Jacob talks about me, constantly. It's annoying, to be honest. Helen sat in the chair behind the desk, while Emily remained standing. May I ask why you're here, Mrs. Miller? I'm here because I need to understand what kind of spell you've cast on my son. Excuse me? Jacob has always been an obedient boy, ambitious, focused on the family's success. But since he came back, it's like he's a different person. He's sad, melancholic, has no interest in work. Emily didn't know what to say. Part of her was glad to know Jacob missed her as much as she missed him, but another part felt guilty for being the cause of his suffering. I didn't cast any spell on him, she finally said. We just met. We worked together. Is that all that happened? You just worked together? Emily hesitated for a moment. Should she tell Jacob's mother about her feelings, about the connection they had shared? We became friends, she replied evasively. Helen smiled ironically. My dear, I'm not stupid. I know when a man is in love, and my son is head over heels in love with you. Did he tell you that? He didn't need to. It's in the way he sighs when he thinks no one is watching. It's in the way he looks at his phone, waiting for a message. It's in the way he says your name. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. Knowing that Jacob missed her as much as she missed him was both a blessing and a curse. And what do you want me to do about it? Emily asked. I want you to stay away from him for good. The coldness in Helen's voice sent a shiver down Emily's spine. Excuse me? My son has a bright future ahead of him. He is destined to lead a business empire. He can't afford distractions. Is that what I am? A distraction? You're a beautiful girl, I'll give you that. But you're from a different world than ours. You don't have a college education, have important social connections. You have nothing to offer Jacob except, well, the obvious. Emily felt anger begin to build in her chest. The obvious? You're young and pretty. That's attractive to any man. But Jacob needs a wife who is his equal, someone who can support his professional and social ambitions. A wife? Emily asked, surprised that Helen had gone so far in her assumptions. Oh, yes. I've seen the way Jacob talks about you. He's thinking in serious terms. And that cannot happen. Emily sat in the chair opposite the desk, needing to process what she was hearing. Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, I think Jacob should be the one to make those decisions. Jacob is young and idealistic. He thinks love is enough. But I've lived long enough to know that love without financial and social stability turns into resentment. Are you speaking from personal experience? Helen tensed. That's none of your business. But you're making decisions about your son's life based on your own experience, aren't you? I am protecting my son from making the same mistake I did. Emily leaned forward. What mistake? Helen hesitated for a moment, as if debating internally whether to share that information. I married for love, she said finally. Jacob's father. He had no money, but he had dreams and ambition. I thought that would be enough. And what happened? What happened is that dreams don't pay the bills. What happened is that passion fades when you have to worry about putting food on the table. What happened is that resentment grew between us until we couldn't even look at each other. Emily began to understand where Helen's fears came from. Is that why Mr. Miller built his business empire? Richard worked day and night, so he would never feel poor again, and he succeeded. But in the process, we lost what we once had. Love, Helen confirmed sadly. Now we have money, status, respect, but we don't have love. Emily felt a deep sorrow for the woman in front of her. Suddenly, she understood why Helen was so desperate to prevent Jacob from making the same mistake. Mrs. Miller, I understand your concerns, but don't you think it's possible to have love and stability at the same time? Not when people come from worlds as different as you and Jacob. And what if I went to school? What if I got an education, if I bettered myself? Would that change your opinion? Helen looked at her with surprise. You would do that? If it meant being with Jacob, I would do anything. But that would take years. And in the meantime, Should Jacob put his life on hold, waiting for you to become someone appropriate for him? Helen's words hurt because they held a grain of truth. Emily knew she had a lot to learn, a lot to grow, but she also knew that what she felt for Jacob was real. Mrs. Miller, may I ask you a question? Go ahead. Is Jacob happy now, working in the family company, doing what you and your husband expect of him? Helen was silent for a moment. He'll adjust. That's not what I asked. I asked if he is happy. Happiness is a luxury not all of us can afford. And what if I told you that Jacob was happier here in this restaurant than I have ever seen anyone in my life? I would tell you that momentary happiness isn't worth it if it comes at the cost of the future. Emily stood up from the chair, feeling exhausted by the conversation. What do you want me to do, Mrs. Miller? What exactly did you come here to ask? Of me? I want you to tell Jacob you don't love him. I want you to tell him that what happened between you was just a misunderstanding, a mistake. I want you to break his heart enough so he can move on with his life. Emily gasped. You want me to lie to him? I want you to set him free. And if I refuse? Helen smiled coldly. Then I will make sure this restaurant is shut down for good. And not only that, I will make sure you can't get a decent job anywhere in this city. Threatening me. I am giving you a chance to do the right thing, to prove you truly love my son by making the sacrifice he cannot make. Emily felt the world crumbling around her. Helen had the power to destroy not only her life, but also the lives of all the restaurant's employees. I need time to think, she said finally. You have until tomorrow night, Helen replied, rising from the chair. If you haven't spoken to Jacob by then, I will take more drastic measures. Helen walked to the door, but stopped before leaving. Emily, I know you think I'm a cruel woman, but someday when you're older, you'll understand that sometimes hurting someone in the present is the only way to protect them in the future. With those words, Helen left the office, leaving Emily alone with an impossible decision. That night, Emily arrived at her apartment completely shattered. Jessica was waiting with dinner ready, but one look at her sister's face told her something terrible had happened. What happened? Jessica asked immediately. Emily told her everything, Helen's visit, her threats, the impossible decision she had to make. You can't do what she's asking, Jessica said when Emily finished. You can't lie to Jacob. But what choice do I have? If I don't, she'll ruin the lives of so many innocent people. And what if you ruin your own life, and Jacob's in the process? Emily collapsed onto the sofa, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Jess, there's something I haven't told you. What? The reason Jacob's mother is so desperate to keep us apart. Emily told her about Helen and Richard's story, about how their love had turned to resentment, about how they had sacrificed happiness for financial stability. I understand why she's scared, Emily said, but does that mean I have to sacrifice my happiness and Jacob's for her fears? No, Jessica replied firmly. Her fears are hers, not yours. But she has power, Jess. Real power to hurt us. Jessica took her sister's hands. Emily, do you remember what you told me when Mom and Dad died? You told me we couldn't let fear control our lives, that we had to be brave and fight for what was important. Emily nodded, remembering that conversation. This is the same thing. You have to be brave and fight for what's important, and Jacob is important, isn't he? He's the most important thing that's ever happened to me, Emily admitted. Then you have to fight for him. It doesn't matter how powerful his mother is. It doesn't matter how much money they have. Love is worth the fight. But as Jessica spoke, Emily remembered Helen's words. Sometimes hurting someone in the present is the only way to protect them in the future. What if Helen was right? What if love wasn't enough? What if Emily really was an obstacle in Jacob's path to a successful future? That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking about Jacob, about Helen, about the decision she had to make. Her heart told her to fight for their love, but her mind told her that maybe Helen was right. At dawn, she made a decision that would change everything. The secret will finally be revealed. and nothing will ever be the same. What decision do you think Emily will make? Will she fight for her love or sacrifice herself for Jacob? Comment from which city you're watching us and tell us what you would do, like if you're suffering as much as we are. Subscribe so you don't miss the end of this story that has us on the verge of tears. It was Saturday morning when Emily took the bus to Beverly Hills, the district where the Miller family lived. She had spent the entire night thinking about Helen's words, Jessica's words, and her own. In the end, she had reached a conclusion that surprised even herself. The building where the Millers lived was imposing, 30 floors of glass and steel that rose to the sky like a monument to success. Emily felt small and intimidated as she waited in the elegant lobby. "I'm here to see Jacob Miller," she told the concierge. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's important. Tell him it's Emily Harris." The concierge looked her up and down, clearly judging whether she belonged there. Finally, he made the call. "Mr. Miller says to come up, 25th floor." The elevator ascended silently, and with each passing floor, Emily felt her heart beat faster. When the doors opened, she found herself in an elegant hallway with only 2 doors. One of them opened before she could knock. Jacob appeared in the doorway, and Emily's breath caught. He was thinner, paler, and there was a sadness in his blue eyes that hadn't been there before. He was dressed casually in jeans and a white shirt, but he looked tired, as if he hadn't slept well in days. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse, "what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," she replied, noticing how Jacob's hands were trembling slightly. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, Jake, just 5 minutes." He hesitated for a moment, but finally stepped aside to let her pass. The apartment was spectacular, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the entire city, modern and elegant furniture, a kitchen that looked like it was out of a magazine. But despite all the elegance, the place felt cold, empty. There was nothing personal, nothing that spoke of the Jacob that Emily knew. "Do you want something to drink?" Jacob asked, keeping his distance. "No, thank you. I just want to talk to you." Jacob sat on the sofa, but Emily remained standing. She had rehearsed what she was going to say the entire trip, but now that she was in front of him, all the words had vanished. "Your mother visited me yesterday," she said finally. Jacob tensed immediately. "What?" "She came to the restaurant. She wanted to talk to me about us." "Oh my God," Jacob murmured, running his hands through his hair. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would. She wants me to tell you that I don't love you." Emily continued. "She wants me to lie to you so you can move on with your life." Jacob shot up from the sofa. "What else did she say?" "She told me about her and your father, about how their love turned to resentment, about why she's so scared of you making the same mistake. And I suppose she threatened you too." "Yes," Emily admitted. "She said she would close the restaurant and make sure I couldn't get a decent job anywhere." Jacob walked to the window, his fists clenched. "I'm not going to let her hurt you. I didn't come here to complain about your mother, Jake." "Then why did you come?" Emily took a deep breath, preparing for the most important moment of her life. "I came to tell you that your mother is right." Jacob turned to her, his eyes wide. "What?" "We are from different worlds. I don't have a college education. I don't have social connections. I have nothing to offer you but my love." "Emily, but I also came to tell you something else," she continued, her voice stronger. "I came to tell you that I don't care." Jacob looked at her, confused. "I don't care that we're from different worlds. I don't care that your family has money and mine doesn't. I don't care that the road will be difficult." Emily walked towards him, determination in every step. "What I care about is that when I'm with you, I feel whole. I care that you make me laugh when I'm sad. I care that you see things in me that I didn't even know existed." "Emily, you can't." "I'm not finished," she interrupted. "I also care that when I'm away from you, I feel like a part of me is missing. I care that I miss you so much, it physically hurts." Jacob closed his eyes, as if Emily's words were too painful to hear. "And I care that if we don't fight for this, for us, I will regret it for the rest of my life." "And what do you propose we do?" Jacob asked, his voice breaking. That I ignore my mother's threats? That I let her destroy the lives of innocent people? I propose we find another way. There isn't one, Emily. I've already thought it through. There is no other way. Emily smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Yes, there is, but it requires us to be brave. What do you mean? I mean we stop letting others decide our future. I mean we make our own decisions, regardless of the consequences. The consequences could be terrible. More terrible than living without love, more terrible than spending the rest of our lives wondering what would have happened. If we had been brave. Jacob stared at her, and Emily could see he was fighting an internal battle. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we open our own restaurant. Jacob blinked, surprised. What? You have the experience and the knowledge. I have the determination and the desire to learn. Together, we could create something beautiful, something of our own. Emily, that requires money, a lot of money. Then we'll find investors. We'll take out loans. We'll work day and night if we have to, but we'll do it together. And what if we fail? Then we will have failed fighting for something we believe in instead of living a life that others chose for us. Jacob approached her slowly until they were face to face. Are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to risk everything for us? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Emily replied without hesitation. Jacob raised his hands and gently touched Emily's face, just as he had done so many times before. I love you, he murmured. I love you so much it scares me. I love you too, Emily replied, and I don't want to be afraid anymore. Without another word, Jacob kissed her. It was a kiss full of promises, of hope, of love that had been held back for too long. Emily felt as if all the pain of the last few weeks vanished in that moment. When they parted, they both had tears in their eyes. Do you really think we can do it? Jacob asked. I know we can do it, but first, we have to talk to your mother. My mother? Yes. I think it's time she understood that we are adults capable of making our own decisions. Jacob smiled. That's going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm ready for anything, as long as you're by my side. I will always be by your side, Jacob promised. 2 hours later, Emily and Jacob were in the living room of the Miller family home, waiting for Helen and Richard to make their appearance. The house was even more impressive than Jacob's apartment. A mansion in Beverly Hills, with perfectly manicured gardens and architecture that spoke of generations of wealth. When Helen entered the living room, her face hardened at the sight of Emily and Jacob holding hands. What is the meaning of this? She asked in an icy voice. It means we've made a decision, Jacob replied firmly. Richard entered behind his wife with the same expression of disapproval. Jacob, I hope you're not about to do something stupid, Richard said. I'm about to make the smartest decision of my life, Jacob replied. Helen sat in one of the elegant armchairs, maintaining her composure, but with evident fury in her eyes. Miss Harris, I thought we had an agreement. We had no agreement, Emily replied in a calm but firm voice. You threatened me, but I never accepted your terms. Threatened? Richard asked, looking at his wife in surprise. I did what was necessary to protect our son, Helen replied defensively. Threatening an innocent girl is protecting our son, Jacob asked, his anger rising. That innocent girl is going to ruin your future, Helen retorted. No, Emily said, standing up from the sofa. I'm going to build my future with him. Helen laughed bitterly. How? With what money? With what education? With what connections? With hard work, with determination, and with love, Emily replied. The same things you used to build your empire before you forgot their value. Richard looked at Emily with surprise. No one had spoken to him like that in decades. We're going to open our own restaurant, Jacob announced. Without your money, without your influence, without your help, we're going to build something of our own. That's ridiculous, Helen said. Do you know how many restaurants fail in the first year? Do you know how many marriages fail because people marry for the wrong reasons? Emily responded. A heavy silence settled in the room. Richard and Helen looked at each other, and Emily could see a deep pain in their eyes. You love each other, Emily said softly. I can see it, but somewhere along the way, you let fear become stronger than love. Love doesn't pay the bills, Helen muttered. No, Emily admitted, but money doesn't buy happiness either, and you two are proof of that. Richard cleared his throat. And what if I offer you a loan for your restaurant? Everyone looked at him in surprise. Richard, Helen began. No, Helen, the girl is right. We've been so worried about protecting our success that we forgot what really matters. Are you serious? Jacob asked. I'm completely serious, but with conditions. What are they? Emily asked. First condition, Emily must study business administration while you run the restaurant. Second condition, you must prove you can make the business profitable within 2 years. Third condition, if you fail, Jacob returns to the family company. Jacob and Emily looked at each other. And if we succeed? Jacob asked. If you succeed, you will have my respect. And my unconditional support, Richard replied. Helen stood up abruptly. I can't believe you're willing to bet our son's future on this experiment. Helen, Richard said softly, do you remember when we were young? Do you remember what we felt for each other? Helen's eyes filled with tears. That was a long time ago. It doesn't have to be just a memory, Richard said. Maybe it's time we remembered how to love too. Helen looked at Jacob and Emily, who were still holding hands, radiating the kind of love she and Richard had lost years ago. Fine, she said finally, but if this doesn't work, don't expect any sympathy from us. We don't expect sympathy, Emily replied. We only expect the chance to prove what we're made of. 6 months later, Heart and Soul opened its doors in Venice Beach. It was a small but cozy restaurant, decorated with photos of Emily's family and plants she tended to herself. The menu combined classic American comfort food with modern twists that Jacob had perfected. Emily had started her business administration studies at a local college, attending classes in the mornings and working at the restaurant in the afternoons and evenings. It was exhausting, but she had never been happier in her life. On opening night, as they watched the restaurant fill with satisfied customers, Jacob took Emily's hand. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Regret what? Choosing the hard path. Emily smiled, looking around the restaurant they had built. Together, filled with laughter and conversation, full of life and love. Never, she replied. This is our place. This is our story. And what if we fail? We're not going to fail. But if we did, at least we would have failed together, fighting for something we believe in. Jacob kissed her softly. I love you, Emily Harris. I love you too, Jacob Miller. Forever. That night, after closing the restaurant, Emily and Jacob sat on the small back patio under the California stars. Jessica had joined them to help with the business, and Maria had decided to leave the Golden Coast to work with them. You know what's the most beautiful thing about all this? Emily asked, resting her head on Jacob's shoulder. What? That when I was a girl, I dreamed of having a family. When my parents died, I thought that dream had died too. But now I have a different kind of family. A family I chose, and that chose me back. Jacob hugged her tighter. We all deserve to be chosen by someone who truly sees us. And you know what else? What else? That this story isn't just about us. It's about anyone who has ever felt like they weren't enough, that they didn't belong, that their dreams were too big for their reality. What do you mean? I mean, if we could do it, anyone can. True love doesn't know social class, education, or money. True love only knows brave hearts willing to fight for it. Jacob smiled. You're right. And someday when we have kids, we'll tell them this story. The story of how their mom and dad met? The story of how two people from different worlds decided to create their own world together. Emily closed her eyes, feeling a deep peace in her heart. She had found her place in the world, not in a university or a traditional job, but in the arms of the man who loved her for who she truly was. And as the stars shone over Los Angeles, Emily knew that her story was just beginning. This story isn't just about them. It could also be about you. This story has come to an end. Were you as moved as we were? Subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. Comment from which city you're watching us and tell us what you thought. Suggest new ideas for our next love stories. Your opinion is very important to us. 5 years later, the morning sun filtered through the large windows of Heart and Soul, illuminating the wooden tables that Jacob had carved by hand during the long nights of the first year. Emily moved between the chairs with a natural grace she had developed over 5 years, but now there was something different in her walk. Her movements were slower, more careful, protecting the small treasure growing in her belly. "Mummy, can I help with the flowers?" a small voice asked from the entrance. Emily smiled at the sight of her younger sister Jessica, now 21, entering the restaurant with her 3-year-old daughter Hope. Jessica had followed in Emily's footsteps in some ways. She had married young to Michael, a chef she met during one of the cooking classes they offered at the restaurant on weekends. But unlike Emily, Jessica had been able to finish her university studies in education, graduating with honors, while Hope grew up surrounded by the love of the entire extended family they had created. "Of course, my love," Emily replied, crouching carefully to be at her niece's level. "But first, give Auntie Emily and the baby a kiss." Hope ran to her and planted a loud kiss on her cheek, then leaned down to kiss her 6-month belly. "Hi, baby cousin," she murmured against the fabric of Emily's navy blue dress. "I'm Hope, and I'm going to teach you how to make pretty flowers." Jessica approached and hugged her sister. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. The morning sickness is finally going away," Emily replied, instinctively touching her belly. "Jacob says it's because the baby already knows we're in our happy place. Where's my favorite brother-in-law?" "At the farmer's market, picking out ingredients for today's special menu. You know how he is. He has to touch every tomato, smell every herb, chat with every vendor." Jessica laughed. "Some habits never change." "And thank goodness for that," Emily said tenderly. "That obsession with perfection is part of what got us here." And they had come a long way. Heart and Soul had not only survived the 2-year trial Richard had imposed, but it had become one of the most beloved restaurants in Los Angeles. Not for its elegance, though it was beautiful in its own unique way, but for the genuine warmth that radiated from every corner. Customers came not just for the exceptional food, but for the feeling of being at home, of being part of an extended family. Emily had finished her degree in business administration the previous year, balancing her studies with pregnancy and managing the restaurant. The graduation ceremony had been one of the most emotional nights of her life. Jacob, Jessica, Michael, Hope, Maria, and even Richard and Helen had been there to celebrate with her. Helen had cried throughout the graduation speech, whispering to Richard how proud she was of the woman Emily had become. "Has Maria arrived yet?" Jessica asked, as she helped Hope arrange the vases with fresh flowers that adorned each table. "She got here an hour ago. She's in the kitchen making her famous burger sauce. Says it has to be perfect for today's celebration." Today was special for several reasons. It was the restaurant's 5th anniversary, but it was also the day they had chosen to make an important announcement to their extended family. Emily touched her belly again, smiling at the thought of the surprise they had in store. The restaurant door opened and Jacob entered, carrying several bags from the market, followed by Michael, who was carrying a box full of fresh produce. The two men had developed a deep friendship over the years. Michael had turned out to be not only a talented chef, but also a brother to Jacob, someone with whom he could share the pressures and joys of running a family business. "Good morning, my love," Jacob said, approaching Emily to give her a kiss on the lips and another on the forehead. "How's my family this morning?" "Your family is perfect," Emily replied, enjoying, as always, Jacob's morning ritual of greeting her first, and then the baby. Jacob knelt in front of her and placed his large hands on her belly. "Good morning, little one. Dad brought the best ingredients from the market to celebrate. That soon there will be 3 of us." Hope ran to her Uncle Jacob and jumped into his arms. "Uncle Jake, Mommy says you're going to say something important today." "Really?" Jacob said, feigning surprise as he tickled her. "And what do you think it could be?" That the baby is a girl, and her name will be Hope like me. Everyone laughed. Hope had been convinced for weeks that the baby would be her twin in every way. Maybe, Jacob said, winking at Emily. You'll have to wait like everyone else. The morning passed in the familiar routine they had perfected over the years. Jacob and Michael worked in the kitchen, experimenting with new recipes and perfecting the classics. Jessica handled reservations and coordinated with suppliers, a natural talent she had discovered for numbers and organization. Emily supervised the service and took care of the customer experience, something she had learned not from books, but through years of observing, listening, and caring for people. Maria, now 55 and officially the restaurant manager, was the heart that kept everything running. She had trained 3 more waiters, all young people from the area who needed a chance, just as Emily had needed 1 year ago. We pay it forward, Jacob had told Emily when they hired the first one. We give to others what was given to us. At 2 in the afternoon, after the lunch service ended, the special guests for the celebration began to arrive. Richard was the first to enter, carrying a bouquet of white flowers, Emily's favorite, and a bottle of non-alcoholic cider he had brought especially for her. My dear Emily, he said, hugging her with the tenderness he had developed for her over the years. How is my unborn grandchild? Dad Richard, Emily corrected him with a smile. He had insisted she call him that since the day she and Jacob married in an intimate ceremony in the restaurant's garden. How do you know it's a girl? Grandfather's intuition, he replied with a wink. Helen entered moments later, and the transformation in her over these 5 years had perhaps been the most remarkable of all. The birth of Hope had softened her in ways no one had anticipated. She had become the most devoted grandmother, the one who showed up with impromptu toys and made up stories. Her relationship with Richard had blossomed again. They had started couples therapy 2 years prior and had rediscovered the love that had been buried under decades of expectations and social pressures. Emily, dear, Helen said, hugging her carefully, you're radiant. Pregnancy suits you beautifully. Thanks, Mom, Helen, Emily replied. The first time she had called Helen that, they had both cried. It had taken almost 3 years to get to that point, but now their relationship was genuinely warm. Where is my favorite grandson? Helen asked, referring to Jacob. Your favorite grandson is right here, Jacob said, appearing from the kitchen with his apron on and a smile that hadn't lost an ounce of its charm over the years. You smell like basil and love, Helen said, hugging him, my favorite combination. Over the next hour, the restaurant filled with the people who had become family over these 5 years. There were the employees from the original restaurant, who had kept in touch and came regularly to celebrate important milestones. There was the baker from around the corner, who supplied them with fresh bread every morning and had become a confidant and advisor. There were Emily's college professors, who had followed her progress with pride and affection, and there were the customers who had become friends, the families who celebrated birthdays and anniversaries at Heart and Soul because it felt like a sacred place for important moments. When everyone was gathered, Jacob and Emily stood before the group, holding hands as always. Dear friends, dear family, Jacob began. 5 years ago, Emily walked into my life and changed everything. I not only fell in love with an extraordinary woman, but I found my purpose, my home, my future. And I found so much more than I had ever dreamed of, Emily continued. I found not only love, but a family that chose to love me, a place where I belong, and the certainty that dreams do come true when you have the courage to fight for them. Today we want to share with you some news that fills us with joy, Jacob said, squeezing Emily's hand. In February of next year, Emily announced with a radiant smile, our baby will arrive. The restaurant erupted in applause and cheers. Jessica jumped to hug her sister, Hope shrieked with excitement, and Helen began to cry, tears of joy. But that's not the only news, Jacob said when the applause died down. We also want to announce that we've decided to expand. Not expand the restaurant, Emily clarified quickly, seeing the confused faces. Expand our heart. We are going to start a scholarship program, Jacob explained, for young people like Emily was 5 years ago. Talented, hard-working, full of dreams, but without the resources to achieve them. Each year, we will give 5 young people the opportunity to work here while they study. Emily continued. We will pay for their college education, give them work experience, and provide them with a supportive family, because everyone deserves the chance to be seen, to be valued, to pursue their dreams, Jacob concluded. The silence that followed was different from the previous applause. It was a silence, filled with emotion, with recognition of the beauty of what Jacob and Emily were offering. Richard was the first to speak. I am proud of you, not just for the success of the restaurant, not just for the beautiful family you are creating, but for who you have become as people. When I started working here, Maria said with tears in her eyes, I thought it was just a job, but you showed me that a job can be so much more. It can be purpose, it can be family, it can be love, hope. Who didn't fully understand the words, but felt the emotion, ran to Emily and Jacob and hugged them both. Does that mean you're going to help more people like you helped my mommy Jess? She asked in her clear little voice. Exactly like that, my love, Emily replied, lifting her into her arms. That's good. So more kids will have aunts and uncles like you. The afternoon continued with food, laughter, stories, and plans for the future. As the sun began to set and the guests started to leave, Emily and Jacob were left alone in the restaurant, slowly cleaning up while processing the magnitude of the day. Do you remember the first time we were alone here after closing? Jacob asked as he dried glasses. Of course, Emily replied, caressing her belly as she arranged the chairs. It was the night you told me you were falling in love with me, and you told me I deserved to fight for my happiness. We were both right. Jacob came up behind her and hugged her, placing his hands over hers on her belly. Did you ever imagine life would bring us here? He murmured against her ear. I never dared to imagine this much, Emily replied, leaning back against him. But now I can't imagine any other life. Do you know what excites me most about the baby? What? That he or she will grow up in a world where love won, where 2 people from different worlds proved that love is stronger than fear, more powerful than differences, more enduring than difficulties. Emily turned in his arms to look him in the eye. Our child will grow up knowing they belong exactly where they are, that they are loved for who they are, and that their dreams are valid no matter how big. And if it's a girl, then she will grow up knowing that strong women can change the world when they have the courage to fight for what they believe in. Jacob kissed her softly, a kiss full of all the promises they had made over the years and all those yet to come. I love you, Emily Miller, he murmured against her lips. I love you, Jacob Miller, now and always. That night, after closing the restaurant and walking slowly to their apartment just 2 blocks away, they had chosen to live close to their workplace to remain part of the business's daily life. Emily paused at the corner where the hot dog stand she had worked at years ago used to be. Remember when I worked here on weekends? She asked, pointing to the spot, now an artisanal coffee cart. I remember everything, Jacob replied. I remember every moment that brought us here. You know what I like most about our story? What? That it's not a fairy tale, it's real. We had to work for it, we had to fight for it, we had to choose it every single day. And we're going to keep choosing it every day for the rest of our lives. As they walked home under the Los Angeles stars, Emily thought of all the people who had been part of their journey. Her sister Jessica, who had found her own love and built her own family without ever ceasing to be her best friend and confidant. Maria, who had become the mother Emily had lost too young. Richard and Helen, who had learned that loving their children meant supporting their decisions, even when those decisions scared them. She thought of all the young employees who had passed through the restaurant, each taking with them not only work experience, but also the certainty that they were valued, that they had something important to offer the world. She thought of the customers who had become friends, the families who had celebrated important moments at Heart and Soul, the community they had built around the simple idea that food tastes better when shared with love. Jacob, she said, as he unlocked the door to their apartment. Yes? Thank you. For what? For seeing me, for choosing me, for building this beautiful life with me. Thank you for teaching me that home isn't a place, but the people you love. That night, as they fell asleep in the bed they had shared for 3 years of marriage, with Jacob's hands resting protectively on Emily's belly, they both knew their story had found its perfect rhythm. It wasn't the happy ending of a fairy tale, but the happy beginning of a real life, full of challenges and joys, hard work and deep love, dreams fulfilled and new dreams yet to be realized. And in February, when their daughter, Hope Helen Miller, came into the world, named for the niece who had predicted her arrival and the grandmother who had learned to love without conditions, Emily and Jacob knew their love story had created something even more beautiful, a new generation that would grow up knowing that true love knows no boundaries, that dreams come true when combined with hard work, and that family is built not just by blood, but by choice, commitment, and unconditional love. The story of Emily and Jacob had become the story of a family, a community, of all those who believed that true love is worth fighting for.